Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, God, amen.
Hello, beautiful friends. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Claudine.
And this is Shokran Very Much, the podcast. And this week's episode is titled AI's Impact on the Church.
This next question, we're going to kind of turn into the AI and the church part.
Sure.
Yeah. So, you know, you're bringing up, like, we're constantly technologically advancing. So how do you think the church can embrace technology without compromising its tradition? Like, the whole, like, the church needs to come into the 21st century. Like, people get really fired up about it.
Just be good stewards. And I think Abuna Gregory does a great job of this. He's not scared of the world. Mm-hmm. He has it, he attacks it head on. And not attacks, but distills out the good from the bad. Mm-hmm. We can't just, like, see things in the world and be like, this is bad. Like, that's not what we were called to do. We're actually called to be in the world and draw people to ourselves. So we have to take the good that's in the world, and there's a lot of beauty. There's a lot of beauty in those outside the church, like even the people. Mm-hmm. And God's creation create beautiful things, and we can't ignore it. So that there first has to be a mindset change of, like, we are not, like, we are lucky that we are in the ark of the church, but that doesn't mean that everything outside is awful. Yeah. And we can't have that mindset, especially as Copts, when we come from persecution and, you know, our parents went through some really tough things, and our grandparents and so on and so forth. Like, there is an aura of fear around the outside. And I think especially as a Coptic church, we definitely experience that. And so we, as the kids of those people, have to know that, yes, we're not of this world, but God created beauty and it's in the world, and I should find that. I should seek that out, and that's actually going to make me closer to God, because it'll humble me. It'll make me say, oh, you're so merciful, your light shines upon the righteous and the wicked, and I see that light, you know. Whether it's in our coworkers, you know, people we're in school with, you know, whatever, anyone can produce anything beautiful, and everyone is truly good in their you know, in how they were created. So we should embrace that. So then us as a church need to have a more critical mindset and be like, okay, we need to think critically about the things we're doing in the church and the attitudes we have, and when new things come up, this being one of them, or new ideologies, we need to think about them critically. Because if we don't, and we just reject them, even if they're bad, and we just straight up reject them, that's just going to turn people off if you're not engaging with it and thinking about it, right? So homosexuality is a great example. Comes up in full throttle in this era, right? And, okay, do we just say, no? It's like, no, let's think critically about why this is wrong and why this is a deviation of our natural state. Let's think about it so I can talk to my brothers and sisters in the world about that. And so I myself am not just blindly following my church as my mother. And I'm understanding and I'm engaging with her. If we do that and we're not scared of doing that, we'll see that the truth of the church and the truth of God comes out in everything we do, not just the things inside the church. And so this is going to require a generational mindset change of not being fearful, of seeing the world as beautiful and seeing God's creation as beautiful, including his people. And the products of those people can also be beautiful and point to God.
I mean, one of my favorite things that Abuna always says is, like, God doesn't want us to just, like, obviously there's a lot of faith involved, but there is this degree of understanding that he wants us to have, and that's
absolutely.
And he's always preaching that, like, he gave you a mind, and so use it, like, understand.
Yeah. And that's, I think, I mean, especially in this era, like, if we're called to bring all to Christ, that's how you do it. You do it by thinking. This generation is not one that is easily swayed, right? But when truth hits you in the face, you can't stop but think about it, right? And so we have to understand that truth and be able to communicate it properly. And so I don't have any fear about working in an industry like this. I only have my, you know, like, I'm not exactly like the people I work with, right? But that doesn't mean what we work on is inherently evil. No, we're working on something that's fun and cool and whatever, and can reflect God as well, even if it's not in a Christian setting. And that's an important thing to take into consideration. Yeah.
So, social media. I read a post about how we could potentially use AI to spread the message of God. They called it the digital preacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think AI can effectively spread the message of love and redemption? Or I feel like it might take away a little bit of like the sacredness and like intimacy of God's love.
I mean, it's a tool, right? So just like you use the internet to look things up, you could use it. You could train an AI bot to talk with you about creation.
Yeah.
Like, what's to stop it from that?
That's a good point.
Right? Like, but that doesn't mean it's the same as having a relationship with God or having a relationship with a priest. Nothing is going to replace humans. Humans are made in the image of God. And nothing's going to replace God himself. God is love. God is light. God is life. So, again, it's a tool. And, like, we can use tools. There's nothing wrong with that. And we should. We absolutely should embrace everything at our disposal to spread the good news. And so, yeah, why not? Like, why not go all out, use our talents for good? And that's an example of it, and there will be more. Like, absolutely. Yeah. People are going to get better at this and come up with some really cool ideas, and we should be excited about them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you touched on a couple, but like, what are some worries or like concerns that you have with like the rise of AI?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the world ending. Oh my gosh, you should see us.
It's the end.
Working on these, because again, like, I should touch a little bit on how these work, right? They need data, right? They need to see something to be able to do the same thing. So we, as a company, most of the time, but there's like entire teams dedicated to creation of data, synthetic data, or like getting data, you know. And so we need to train on conversations, so our data is conversations. Oh my gosh, you should see the back and forth that like me and my coworker have had just like training this one model to like spell like, or understand spelling.
No way.
No, it's actually the funniest thing ever. Like, we were just talking about it, and I randomly said, like, I can't believe people think AI is gonna take over the world. And he laughed at it, and he said, yeah, my parents are so worried, and I keep telling them they're stupid. And then I said, yeah, just show them this chat, and they'll be fine. Like, the amount of effort it takes, and the amount of data honing and getting the right data and not overfitting to certain types of data, because like if you only show it one thing, it's not going to be able to do other things.
Yeah.
So you have to like spread out, and you have to think very critically about the data you're using and this and that. Like, there are people who dedicated their lives, they're data scientists, and like we're just a bunch of like engineers at a startup, and it's like that's how much work it takes to get it to be able to understand spelling. Like, like it's just,
this is not gonna run countries, guys.
Yeah. Like, please, please check yourselves. It's just we have a really good laugh about it, because
that's so funny.
Obviously, like, we're a little startup, and you know, there's DeepMind, there's Google, there's people that are, you know, really working on this. But let me tell you how hard they're working on it to be able to do the things they're doing, right? And any change that needs to be made has to go through the data pipeline and this and that. So, I mean, they can do things really, really well, but they are not humans. Like, they're not humans, and we have to understand that we are not just computational power. We have a spirit, we have a mind, we have a soul. And so this is something that you will like see people are fearful of, because they misunderstand themselves. They misunderstand how valuable they are, how valuable how special they are as a human being, and what their capabilities truly are. And when we push the boundaries of large language models, like the one that powers ChatGPT, we see that it can do things that humans can do very easily, because of how intricately the brain is, the brain is created. It's not just memory, it's not just fast computation. Like, it's like so unbelievably complicated. And when I become a better engineer, I'm gonna like take a break and go study the brain, so I can understand God more and understand his engineering complexity. Because if what we're trying to do is not working, I want to go and appreciate what God did that works perfectly. Yeah. It is like the pinnacle of good engineering.
The most memorable talks that you've given that I remember clearly have been about relationships and fellowship. The one I specifically remember, this has nothing to do with this, but I just have to share this. You gave it during the pandemic. We were over Zoom. Aww. And you were like, the importance of fellowship, and we're all just in our rooms. And I was like, why are you just rubbing this in my face? We can't have it right now.
Because I was going through it. Yeah. So I had to vent about it in front of
it was perfect because that was what we were missing, and it was just really made us appreciate it. But anyway, back to this. How do you think as AI systems become more sophisticated and they spell, we can maintain the sacredness of human or Christian relationships and connection?
Nothing can replace humans, and nothing can be as valuable as human beings. Mm-hmm. Nothing can feel the way humans feel. Nothing can replace one human to another human, right? There's always going to be something missing for a person that tries to find joy outside of fellowship with their community, with people, and with God. There's always going to be something missing for that person. That's what the world is struggling with now. So many people wish they had a community. Burping.
It's okay. We edit this. No, it's all good. Like nothing happened.
So many people wish they had a community like we do. So many people just struggle for connection, and we're always going to come back to that. People are always going to realize something's missing from their life if they try to find value in anything. And the sacredness of the human being is not in its computational power, not how well it can do math or program or how fast it can learn something. It's in the human, it's himself or herself, right? And that's always going to be discovered in God's eyes. You can convince yourself anything you want. If you think you are just computational power, if you think you're just a machine, then you're just going to accept that. When people say it, you're going to treat people like that. You're going to treat yourself like that. But if you feel like I am more than that, which we all know we are, deep down, even if you try to convince yourself you're not. I am more than that, and I'm not just living for myself, I'm living for other people, and that's what fulfills me the most. It's not pleasure, it's not anything that the world is telling me, it's not even intellectual satisfaction, it's not solving something quickly, it's literally relationship with God, with others, and with myself, a good relationship with myself. That truth was going to keep coming up. Mm-hmm. And it's our job as Christians to make sure people see that in us, that nothing is more important than when a human being comes to me and says they need something. Nothing is more than that. My work isn't more important. Nothing, right? Mm-hmm. Investing in that, making that the sacred part of our life, the other human beings in front of us and God in front of us, I think will show other people that there's no better way to live. And that, connections aren't just for the satisfaction of myself, it's for a bigger purpose that I was created for, which is for those around me and to fulfill whatever God wants me to for them, right? Mm-hmm. Everything in the Christian life is self-offering. Marriage is self-offering. Monasticism is self-offering. Everything we do is self-offering. And the world is not happy because it's not giving itself. It's just taking. Mm-hmm. And so the more people see us giving ourselves, they'll realize that something is missing from the equation they've made. And that is actually sacred. That's what makes humans human and not anything else, is the need to give oneself, like God needed. He didn't just want to. It was almost a compulsion. Like, I have to save my kids, And if we hone in on that, nothing in the world is going to point to that. No creation we've done, no worldview points to that besides Christianity, right? And so we live out our truth, right? We don't get carried away in career, in just bettering the world because it's cool, but we actually are thinking about, what is my purpose? My purpose is to love God and others, and how do I live that out? And when people see that in us, they'll know something's different about us, and that mm-hmm. we can't just be a machine, right? I mean, that is barring, of course, the insane complexity of the brain once again. Yeah. The insane you know, all of the systems that we have in our body, like that insane engineering as well. We can talk about that as reasons to defend the faith and to show that we are not just random and we are not just, you know, a very, very powerful computer. But more than that, people will want to even think about that when they see our love first. They're not going to want to engage in that if they don't have a reason to. And the reason is someone was different and I want to be like that person. Yeah. I want to know why they're joyful, right? And that's our job. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love how often that gets repeated in so many different topics we talk about on the podcast. Is we were talking about same-sex attraction and all of these big topics, and I remember our speaker said, like, you can't just approach someone and be like, you got to do it this way for God, or you have to act this way, you can't do this, but you just got to show them God's love first. And I love how often that gets repeated from so many speakers from such a wide variety of backgrounds, and they're always like, God's love first, and then whatever else after.
That's right. Yeah, there's you know, I think most of my life I was working in like I was in a very niche environment. Like, I guess in high school I was around a lot, like I was in the world more. But in college, like, my group of friends was Coptic. Like, I was very much in a Coptic community all the time, like since college and through my master's. So recently has been the first time where I am like constantly engaging with people in the world that are like different than me and grew up really different than me and are just completely different. And I have appreciated God so much more because he's allowed me to see the beauty in these people. I think we can tend to be like, oh, it's us versus them. And that's not the case. We're just beggars, and we as beggars know where to get food, and they don't know where to get food. Yeah, and that's what I heard when in an evangelism talk, right? Like, I'm not showing them how to make food. I'm just I'm supposed to point them, right? Like St. John the Baptist said, like, he who comes after me, which should come before me, for he was before me. That's what we're doing. We're supposed to go before Christ to the world and show them and point to Christ. And so seeing how beautiful all my coworkers are and like how smart they are and how gifted they are, and be like, these are just God's creation. Like, they're not living with him, but they still reflect his beauty. And like, that's so important for us to know and see. And like, that's a really big thing if we're not seeing that, because then we're in our little bubble and we're really like anti people and we're very scared to like interact with people. Like, what are they gonna ask me, this and that, like, how are they, or whatever. And that's not how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be like, if we're living in the world, we should be in it, and we should be interacting with it, and not in a, you know, not going out to bars or whatever, but like enjoying the creation God has made, and enjoying the people there, and trying to learn from them, and then hopefully show them Christ through our actions. But it is the first thing. We go before Christ to the world. So whatever we end up doing, like, I happen to just be doing engineering, and that's where I see God, and it's also where I have a lot of fun. But the people that have been given to me in that space also point to God, and that's been a very rewarding and humbling experience, that God cares for them just as much as he cares for me. And to be in acknowledgement of that is really good for me as a human being, to not treat those who are not like me like they're lesser than me, you know? Yeah.
This episode was insane.
Yeah. I loved it. I promise I talk like so much, but this time I'm just like, whoa. Like, yeah, you keep talking, like, it's all yours.
Yeah, because the amount of knowledge that you dropped in this episode. I have to explain it.
I misspoke.
You guys, Natalie got her undergraduate degree from UCLA, and then she got her master's from Stanford.
Yes.
And I owe them a lot of money.
you know, in the trailer for this podcast, when it first came out, we were like, we're going to be discussing some topics with the brilliant minds of the church. This is one of those episodes. Oh no. This is one of those episodes.
Yeah. So like that's a great topic you just touched on, because the thing about brilliant minds in the church, which I'm not one, is the brilliant minds in the church took a lot of time to learn things from others before they started speaking themselves. You know, someone who does a PhD, like, what they have to do is, like, go see all the research in that field and learn it, and sometimes replicate those experiments and whatever, internalize it, take all the classes on this particular topic before they can start researching. Yeah. Right? And that's how we should be in the church. We should learn as much as we possibly can, and then we can have a really critical mind to, you know, shed light on God's creation in these new ways, like in artificial intelligence. Abuna Gregory does that. He's learned so much about the church that he's able to talk about theology in that perspective, in a perspective that embraces the technology that has come alive, which I'm not where he is. You should have him on to talk about this again, to be honest.
And we'd love to have Abuna Gregory on permanently.
Seriously, I can tell you about a podcast if anyone's interested in AI. My dad has like a 2-hour long podcast.
We will link it below.
Talking about artificial intelligence, but going back to like the creation of the computer and like all the way through and how artificial intelligence developed. Yeah. And he has a way more articulate and robust like way of explaining this. I'm just talking from like the 6 months of experience I have like working in this field. Yeah. But yeah, if anyone's interested in that, they should listen to it. But that's an example of someone who studied, learned a lot, and then started speaking. And we ought to like all be like that, you know.
You know, Abuna Gregory, he's the brilliant mind of the church, and he's just constantly blessing us with all these things, including you. So shukran very much, Natalie, for joining us.
Aww. Shokran very much.
And shokran very much to everyone who tuned in and listened. Please follow us on all our social media accounts. There you can receive updates and send in topic and speaker suggestions, which will be in the show notes. Shokran very much for listening, and
we'll see you next week.